Hey there, this is Matt once again, and welcome back to another review. This uh, nice person named Unconditional Prawn had sent me the Andromeda Strain, which I had never seen before until now. And watching it for the first time, I rather enjoyed it. I rather liked this movie. It's directed by Robert Wise, who directed Star Trek the Motion Picture. He did the original The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's based on the Michael Crichton novel. And it involves a team of scientists that go to this sci-fi looking underground bunker to try to find a cure to this sort of space germ, really, that they nicknamed the Andromeda Strain. Earth's first biological crisis. After a satellite crashes to Earth near a remote New Mexico village, everyone in town is dead. They find an old man and a baby. They take the old man and the baby back to this facility here. And it's a very scientific, step-by-step process of them trying to find out what this is and trying to why this baby and this old man are still alive. And it really is a procedural type of movie. Now, I would say of this kind of film, my favorite is Outbreak. And I mention that because people may be like, well, how do you like Outbreak more than this? Between the two, granted, it doesn't have the sci-fi aspects this does with the setting and the way this facility looks. I thought the cast was a little bit more dynamic, and the characters were a little bit more dynamic. I mean, you have Dustin Hoffman, my favorite role of his, Rene Russo, Morgan Freeman, Cuba Gooding Jr., Donald Sutherland, J.T. Walsh, and you have some pretty memorable lines. If one of them's got it, then 10 of them's got it, and then we're in deep fucking shit. And we're already in deep fucking shit. One of my favorite lines from Dustin Hoffman. So that's why I would put Outbreak above this, but this was still a pretty damn good flick. And I actually wrote a couple little notes to. Now, I don't want to forget anything. First off, like I said, the idea of being very scientific and step by step, I definitely see if people call this film, despite its sort of sci-fi setting of the bunker, realistic. I can see that. Because it seemed like they took some effort as to what would really happen, what would you really do if something like this occurred. And I do think the sets are very interesting, and I really like the step-by-step process of decontamination and some very inventive ideas. Like you have certain levels. Like for example, it's 4 people who are our main characters. 3 male, 1 female. One guy is a doctor. One guy is the leader. The lady, I forget what kind of scientist she is, and then you find out later she has a little bit of epilepsy from red lights. And then you have this older gentleman who does some of the autopsies and such of animals that they're testing the stuff on. And 2 of them go into this facility, and they go into this storeroom, and all of a sudden the storeroom becomes an elevator. Or these sort of curvy settings, futuristic type of settings. When they're doing the decontamination, you have one instance where they're in this room and they put this thing on, which reminds me of the Shockmaster from WCW, but this sort of almost, it looks jewel-studded headgear to protect their face, and then this blast occurs, and all of a sudden all these skin flakes are on their body. And because, as we all know, this is always shedding, so a lot of times when you have the light a certain way, you see all this dust in the air. A lot of that dust is your skin. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, boom, trying to be as clean as possible. That just wiped all the possible skin flakes off you. There's another one where they put their feet through this water to clean their feet. There's another where, like, every time they go to a level, they shed these clothes and they put them in this sort of burner, this little furnace that's in the floor. I know Douglas Trumbull, who's worked in quite a few effects, he had a hand in this, and this will lead him into films like Silent Running with Bruce Dern, which is still a film I've yet to see. One day I will. But it kept me interested and involved to see what would happen next. And also Robert Wise's direction. And whether you want to say it's the director or the cinematographer or whoever was a result of these type of interesting shots that they do throughout the flick. For example, when the two scientists are going down the elevator, they do sort of, you would see this kind of thing in Brian De Palma movies like Carrie, among other movies, where like you see a little box with one person here, a little box with one person here, and then a little box which is a light of the elevator showing going down as each of these two people are having a conversation with each other. Or when the doctor and leader in the first 30 minutes they're in the town of dead people. And there's certain times where it'll be like a box and a person will look in to a store and then a box appears and there's the dead person. Then that disappears and then you see the person walk and look into another place. Then another box appears and that's a dead person or a dead kid or something of that sort. Also the framing, they really knew how to use the widescreen format. For example, in that dead town, there'll be a person looking to this barber shop and you have like the person here in the background, and in the foreground you have the dead guy in the barbershop here. So certain frame way they frame stuff, certain things they did with the like these little boxes that appear from time to time. Even the opening credits where it's these different diagrams and words and formulas, and it seemed pretty psychedelic because it's a quirky, not usual soundtrack. Doesn't seem like even quite music, and then you have like this stuff is in blue, this stuff is in red, this stuff is in green, and they're overlaying over each other. So the psychedelic type of credits were, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I was trying to keep me involved with the flick. I appreciate that. And also, interesting things dealing with this has been, as they say in the Blob remake, germ warfare that fucked up. Did you find out that maybe the satellite that brought down is from the government and they wanted some type of new form of germ biological warfare? But while Outbreak, you turn more a little bit of action movie, which I appreciated. Here it's much more of scientific. But certain things with the story, for example, how it would clot the blood. And so when they're looking through the dead bodies of the town, they would cut, like they have cuts, people have cuts, but there's no blood loss. Like there's no blood leaking out, no sign of it. And the doctor cuts into someone and it's just powder. So the blood is clotted so much it's become powder. I thought that was an interesting idea. Another interesting idea is when they're looking for the virus itself, like a physical look at this space germ. They see this, it's done sort of in crystals. Thought it was interesting. At times you see an up close of it, and it'll sometimes pulse up. Other times they see like a certain shot of it. It's like these little triangle almost crystals or diamond shaped crystals, and then they'll multiply. And again, sort of them trying to figure out what's going on, why, what do this baby and this old guy have in common, and yet they're alive, but yeah, other people are dead. So, and then you get to the finale where the doctor's figuring out what it is, something to do with either too much acid or too little acid, like pH. acidic results. So like one person has too much, one has a bit too little, and find the result of it. But then certain other things happen with this virus, this germ warfare, and when something happens, it's going to go into self-destruct, and the doctor has to get to it in time to shut it off, and he's got to go through these floors, and there's even these precautions, like these little laser gun things are precautions, and one like hits the guy in the face, and he's trying the best that he can, which is why you get like this little scene on the catwalk. Overall, the actors do their jobs well. I didn't see any bad acting. You have Arthur Hill, David Wayne, James Olson, Kate Reid. I don't know what else any of these people have been in, but they did pretty damn well for what they were told to do. And for a film from the 70s, I mean, this was 1971 and it was rated G. I didn't find the film too boring. It might not be everyone's cup of tea because if you're going into it for action, you're not really going to get action. You're not going to get horror. It's not that kind of movie. But I will say it's definitely, if the plot, the idea sounds interesting to you, it's definitely worth a look. If you wonder why I'm typing, I wanted to get some more info on the film. Yeah, Michael Crichton's novel was 1969, because this was the time we went to the moon, and people were like, I wonder if you came back from the moon, what if something was brought from the moon? So there's a little bit of paranoia with that. One of the first films to use advanced computerized or optical photographic visual effects, with work with Douglas Trumbull, who had worked on 2001: Space Odyssey. That's cool, yeah. I mean, that's true, and it's cool. You do have certain computer screens, for example, when the leader's telling the other three about what the facility looks like, and he's telling and showing people, and you're seeing these 3D diagrams, which maybe nowadays be like, what's the big deal? But for 1971, it was a big deal. That was not something that was typical. Like here, a computer rendering a map 3D view of the rotating structure of the 5-story underground laboratory in the Nevada desert named Project Wildfire. This electronic diagram which rotates to afford an overall view, or it can be stopped by any section. That's something that you could easily see someone doing nowadays, but again, it was not a typical thing in 1971. And it did decently at the box office. I guess it got a mixed reaction from critics. Kind of surprised by that. Tell you one thing, I like this movie a lot fucking better than Contagion with Matt Damon. I did not like that movie at all. It was only nominated for 2 Academy Awards, Best Art Direction and Best Film Editing, and it lost both of those. And okay, this is what I was looking for. I was going to say, I'm surprised they haven't remade this film, but they did remake it. They remade it in 2008. I guess there was some miniseries. Which, with Benjamin Bratt, Eric McCormick, huh. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the miniseries. I mean, this movie was a bit long enough for 2 hours and 10 minutes. I don't know if a miniseries is really the better thing to do. It was on A&E Network. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever check out the miniseries. I guess at one point there was going to be, in 2004, a Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, executive produced by Ridley and Tony Scott, as well as Frank Darabont. But then it became this A&E Network. Aired as a 4-hour, 2-part miniseries. It was screened as a single 3-ish hour movie in Australia. Again, I don't know if it needs to be that long of a flick. Really don't. Oh, really? The remake was directed by that guy? The guy who did... Okay, is this the same guy I'm thinking of? I want to make sure. Oh, no. I'm thinking of a different guy. This is the guy who did Hard Rain and Freezer. Hard Rain I enjoyed with... I was thinking of a different guy. He did Hard Rain, which I enjoy with Christian Slater, Morgan Freeman, and then he did Freezer, which I thought was a pretty decent direct-to-video flick with Dylan McDermott. Okay, I did not know that. Oh, he did the Salem's Lot TV movie with Rob Lowe, which I've heard good things about. I don't know, maybe one day I'll check it out anytime soon, because, you know, it's a mini-series. They take a long time. But, you know, maybe I'll give it a look, to give it a fair shot. I like the director. So I just wanted to double check. I'm surprised they haven't done a theatrical remake of this movie, considering they remade so many fucking films. It says here in the trivia, Michael Crichton was invited to take a tour of Universal Studios during the production of this film. His guide was none other than Steven Spielberg, who went on to adapt Jurassic Park. This is the trivia on IMDb, so I don't know if it's 100% true, but this is what it says here. And I'm just seeing if there's any other trivia I can mention before I get to the rest of it. Filmed in 1970, not released until 1971. Moderate box office success. Produced on a high budget of $6.5 million because of the building of the sets and things of that nature. The film grossed $12 million in North America and earned $8.2 million in U.S. theatrical rentals. I didn't even realize this. This film and Sphere, also based on a novel by Michael Crichton, have similar concept. Both involve teams of civilian scientists who never met each other called in to evaluate a potential alien threat. In this film, it's a virus brought to Earth by a fallen satellite, and Sphere is a large glowing extraterrestrial orb found in a spaceship discovered on the ocean floor. Sphere is another one of those movies that I don't mind. I know a lot of people hate it. I don't mind it. It's one I think I did mind it at first because I thought it was going to be a fucking horror movie, and it wasn't. It's not a horror movie at all. I'm like, oh, I thought it would be like Leviathan or Deep Rising or something, but it's far from it. Now, and there are some issues I have with the footage. I do think it's a bit too long at 2 hours and 10 minutes. And when I say 2 hours and 10 minutes, this is not like, oh, and the 10 minutes are, the last 10 minutes are end credits. No, this is like 2 hours and 10 minutes and then like maybe 30 seconds of credits. That's how they worked back in the day. So it's pretty lengthy. That's why like, I'm not sure about the miniseries, which is even longer. So I think there's some stuff that could have been cut out. For example, you have this little subplot with this pilot. Right, I like the kind of a creepy image where the pilot is flying over and then his net starts to fall apart. And like sand, pebble, dirt fall apart, like it starts turning to that. And the pilot kind of collapses. His throat's collapsing. And then the plane crashes. But I guess that was only done because when the military men get there, they say, well, his hose got eaten up and it's polycron or polymon, something with poly in it. And then later on, at the end of the movie, you find out that the facility has those same kind of things for the gaskets, which is what then causes the almost destruction of the facility. But now that I think about it, when that pilot goes down and the military men are there, how come they're not infected? Because obviously the body would have to be there. They find the dead pilot's helmet. So isn't the virus there? Wouldn't it kill the men? Or did the virus, what, die from the plane crash? Like, if it attacked him and got him infected, collapsed his throat, I think it wouldn't be infected. So how come the military men are there? How come they're not dead? So that's if you're a big fan of the movie, you can answer me that question. Maybe I missed something, but yeah, how come I wrote that down? Like, an infection to the soldiers when find remains, because at this point it's shown that it's airborne. And yeah, I know, like, the whole subplot was just, oh yeah, his hose thing is made of this material, and then we over here it's the same material that's in the facility underground. But it's like, there are other ways you could have done that you didn't need. I mean, I like the pilot collapsing, but hell, you could have done that near the beginning of the film. Do a flyover, then it collapses, and like, what the hell? How did his throat collapse? Did I see what I see? And then it's like, well, wait a minute, how come no one is wearing suits, and the military men, they don't infect it? So I don't understand that. Well, another thing that I do like, which I forgot to mention, was the beginning of the film when the military, hey, there's something going on with this town. They send the men there, and you don't see what happens to the men. You just hear it on the radio, and you see the other military guys' reaction to them going, "Oh, we see bodies," and and screaming. So makes your imagination play out more of what had happened. Like I said, my problem is it's a bit too long. The little bit with the pilot, not needed, I don't think. And again, I'm like, well, how come no one else is infected since they're all around the remains of the plane, and they even find the helmet, and they even pick up. Apparently, he's been eaten to the bone, and the guy even picks up the bone with his bare hands. I mean, for a film that's very scientific, it's like you're picking up the bone with your bare hands. Like, you don't even have a glove on. Let's see. Like I said, it was a bit too long. The lady scientist, it's kind of weird because of the four, the lady scientist is the one that kind of is the only one that screws up. Well, I guess maybe the old guy screwed up too in the autopsy, so maybe she's not the only one that screws up, but what happens with her, again, she has this epilepsy with red light. She's supposed to be checking these samples, and red light occurs, and she has sort of this seizure. She sort of freezes, and then she snaps out of it. And then later on, this red light kind of collapses and epileptic. People think it's the virus, but the doctor's like, no, it's not the virus. It's this. But it's just that, like, the actress did a good job. But it seemed as if, was she really needed? Because I don't even remember anything she really brought to the table that the other three could not do. Like, the doctor figured it out. The lead guy was with the girl, and they find the splotch to see what the virus looks like. The other guy's doing the autopsy. So what did you really need this lady scientist for? Like, one of the few things she's supposed to do, she screws up. So, and yeah, it's like, she's only there to screw up? I mean, I don't know, it just made me go, was this a character we really needed? And no, it's not because she's a lady. If it was a guy, I would be saying the same thing. Like, is this guy really needed? Hell, you take that actress and do the stuff she could be the leader, or she could be the guy who does the autopsies. You only really need 3 characters. Like, you didn't really need 4, because the 4th character didn't really do much of anything. Again, if I missed something, feel free to mention it. Also, this part of the 3rd act was a bit confusing to me. There's a part where the doctor figures out what the connection between the baby and the guy's at, the old guy. And then, apparently there's this problem, contamination in the autopsy, and the leader and the doctor's trying to help the old guy, who's in another room, and he's trying to tell him what to do. And then they look over and they see a rat is alive, like a mouse is alive. And they're like, oh, it's not airborne, I'm like, okay, I guess it's not airborne. It's mutated, so it's not airborne anymore. And I guess that's why the mouse isn't dead. But here's my question. If it's not airborne, then how come a little bit later the gaskets are affected? That polymer plastic thing that's eaten up, and then the facility's contaminated. I mean, if it's not airborne, how the hell did it get there? You know what I mean? Like, how did it get there? How did it travel there? Did it grow legs and walk over there? And we see more that's not airborne because the lead doctor goes into the contaminated room with no suit on, and he's fine, and he goes in and crawls through, and that's where he goes through this sort of up and down thing that shut down the self-destruct. But idea is like, if it's not okay, they show it's not airborne anymore, but then how did it get to the gaskets and make them eaten up if it's not airborne? Again, for a film that's very scientific, I think that could have been explained more. I mean, if I missed something, feel free to explain to me. I think the stuff with the pilot, like how come no one else is dead when you're picking up the bone of the guy with your bare hands? Those two things, the fourth character doesn't really do much, so did you really need it? And all three of those things maybe would have helped the pacing, which is the fourth thing that's a bit too long. But despite those problems I mentioned, it looked good on Blu-ray. Has a half-hour making of with Robert Wise, and then you have a little talk with Michael Crichton on how he came about writing the book for about 13-14 minutes, and then you have a trailer. Looked good on Blu-ray, I'll say this. I've never seen the film, but this was definitely a great picture quality to me. And for a very scientific movie, it kept my interest. It kept me intrigued to see what would happen next. The really cool looking inventive sets, the special effects with the computer monitors they did back in the day, which was pretty impressive. The acting was fine. Certain way they stage and frame certain shots. Robert Wise or the cinematographer, whoever is responsible for that, they did a wonderful job. It kept my interest. The sort of inventive ways that they decontaminate in order to go down further and further. It made me sort of part of this group to go, what is it, this virus? Like, okay, it's crystals, and it turns blood into powder, and what is it between this baby and this old guy? It's like, it makes me just as curious as them as to what's going on, what is the solution. And overall, I thought this was I think it's well worth a look to anyone. If it's not your cup of tea, I can understand, but I was kind of impressed by the flick. I don't know. For some reason, I thought, oh man, I'm going to be really bored, but I wasn't that bored. I think the pacing could be fits a little bit, but I thought this was a fairly interesting flick that I'm not sure it gets talked about a lot. But I definitely thank Unconditional Prawn for sending me this Blu-ray. Just because it's Robert Wise, and I just reviewed Star Trek the Motion Picture, and I really enjoy that film, and he did a good job with this. Well before Star Trek the Motion Picture, so. The Andromeda Strain. Really liked it. So, thanks for watching. Take care, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.